The second I saw the extra place setting, I knew something was off. We were at Prime and Proper in downtown Detroit. White tablecloths, wine poured before menus, valet out front. This wasn't some casual family dinner. My parents were already seated when I walked in, faces stiff like they were holding in a plan. My name is Dana. I'm 34 years old. I live just outside Detroit, Michigan. Brad showed up 5 minutes later, loud as ever, slapping the waiter on the back like they were old friends. Promotion finally went through, he announced, dropping into his chair. VP of Retail Lending. Not bad for a guy who barely passed calculus, right? Dad laughed too hard. Mom clapped. I nodded, polite. Meanwhile, my ribeye sat untouched while Brad's ego took over the table. Before we go further, quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? So Dana, his wife Courtney said, stabbing at her salad like it offended her, how's the dog thing going? Still chasing golden retrievers around for spare change? I looked at her for half a second. Still running the business, I said. Keeping busy. Busy's good, Dad said. But we've been talking. I set down my fork. There it was. Mom jumped in. You're too smart to waste your talent on pets. We think it's time you looked at something stable, something real. Brad leaned back like he was unveiling a gift. I talked to one of the guys in HR. We can get you in at my bank. Starting salary's good, benefits solid. You'd be at a desk, not crawling around kennels. I blinked. Once, twice. My steak was getting cold. I appreciate that, I said. But I'm not. You're not thinking long term, Mom cut in. That pet hobby was fine when you were 25, but it's time to grow up. Let the real world take over. Brad pulled strings for this, Dad added. We're trying to help. I nodded once. Right. Then Brad pushed back from the table. Well, you've got some thinking to do. We're heading out. What? Courtney stood too, already grabbing her coat. Sometimes tough love's the only love. Dad tossed $100 bill on the table like that settled something. We'll leave you here to think things through. Alone. And they did. Just stood up and walked out of a five-star restaurant like they'd dropped the mic. I sat still, napkin in my lap, eyes on my half-eaten steak, not moving a muscle. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. They thought they'd embarrassed me. They had no idea who they'd just left sitting at that table. I picked up my phone, calm as ever, and shot off a text. Me. They're gone. Bring the documents. 3 minutes later, Alan walked in through the side entrance, sharp as hell in a charcoal suit and leather briefcase in hand. The man moved like he owned the place. And honestly, we kind of did. He scanned the room, spotted me at the table, and gave the slightest nod before walking over. Evening, Ms. Lockhart, he said, sliding into Brad's abandoned seat across from me. Sorry I'm late. Traffic on Woodward. Perfect timing, I said, setting my linen napkin aside. They just cleared out. A server came over, already briefed. Mr. Banks, Ms. Lockhart. We'll clear these plates for you. Champagne's on ice, and the conference binder's being brought now. Alan raised a brow. Well, I'll give them this. They picked a damn fine venue for your victory lap. 2 more staff rushed in, clearing away the untouched ribeye, salad forks, and the stale awkwardness Brad and his entourage had left behind. In its place, a sleek leather portfolio, a printed acquisition agreement, and my pen. Alan flipped open the documents like he'd been waiting to do it all week. Let's get to work. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the clean table. Ridgeview K9 finally agreed to the offer. He grinned. They folded after we showed them last quarter's numbers, 6 locations, our mobile app in the top 5 nationwide, and the celebrity training contract sealed it. I pulled out my phone again, tapped into our shared docs, and cross-checked the numbers. Clean, signed, all green lights. You did this, Alan said, tapping the top page. You turned a 2-person dog walking gig into a $50 million franchise in under 6 years. You built something people said wouldn't last 6 months. Not people, I said. My family. He didn't argue. I reached for the pen, clicked it once, and signed the line in bold. Dana Lockhart, CEO, PupLogic Holdings, LLC. Alan smiled. And just like that, we're national. Champagne arrived at the same time the front doors swung open again. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I heard my father's voice first, somewhere near the host stand. Low, uncertain, like they weren't sure they should have come back. Alan casually poured 2 glasses and handed me one. To leadership. Real leadership. I took a sip and set the glass down without flinching. You think they saw? They're about to. Footsteps behind us. Slower now. Hesitant. I saw the shadow stretch across the table, and still I didn't look up. Alan flipped the page for me. Let's talk next steps. With Ridgeview on board, we'll expand into Texas by Q1, then West Coast by summer. LA's already calling, I said. We need to vet trainers faster. He nodded. Already flagged HR, and media wants you on a podcast next week. I signed again, initials this time. My pen didn't shake once. You sure you're okay with all this happening here? Alan asked quietly. They thought this was an ambush, I said. Let it be one. He smiled, leaned back, and gave the host a small wave. We'll take another round, please. And if you could dim the lights slightly, we're celebrating something real. Just then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw them. My dad, frozen halfway to the table. Brad behind him, blinking like he'd just walked into the wrong restaurant. My mom was fidgeting with her necklace. Courtney clutched her purse like someone might snatch it. I picked up my champagne again and raised it toward Alan. To all the dogs they said I'd never train, and every leash I've ever broken. We clinked glasses. Behind me, no one moved. Alan set his glass down and stood, reaching across the table. I met him halfway and shook his hand, firm and steady. Congratulations, he said, his voice clear and measured. Dana, what you've done here. It's not just impressive, it's elite. 6 locations, record-breaking app growth, and now a national footprint. You built something real, something sustainable, and you did it with 0 outside investors. I've never seen anything like it. The words weren't for me. Not really. I saw my dad shift in the corner of my vision. He took a step forward like he still thought this was some kind of hostage situation. Brad whispered something behind him. I caught the tail end of it. What the hell is this? But no one answered. Alan kept going, raising his voice just enough to carry. Our mobile training app passed 1 million downloads last week, over 70% user retention, and that celebrity retrainer contract locked in for 18 months. That's you, Dana. You built all of it. I didn't look over, not yet. Another server came by, this time with chilled oysters and a dessert menu. Compliments of the chef, she said with a small smile. He asked us to pass along congratulations, Ms. Lockhart. That got their attention. My mom actually blinked like she'd misheard it. Dad finally started walking, fast and stiff like his shoes didn't fit. Dana, he said almost too loud. What's going on here? Are you okay? Alan turned slightly, all professional courtesy, like we weren't in the middle of a public unraveling. She's more than okay, sir. She just signed one of the most strategic acquisitions in the training industry this year. Honestly, I'm lucky to work for her. I smiled and finally looked up. Dad, you came back? He hesitated. We thought maybe we overstepped. You did, I said calmly, but you're just in time to watch me expand into 4 new states. Mom stepped forward now, voice thin. Are those real legal papers? Alan laughed softly, not unkind. Absolutely. We've got a full team finalizing the deal across 2 time zones right now. You're witnessing the ink dry. Brad was still planted by the host stand, staring like he couldn't compute it. Courtney didn't move at all. Dana, Alan said, turning back to me and lifting his glass again. Thank you for trusting me to help you lead this next phase. You've got vision, you've got grit, and more than anything, you've got the numbers to back it all up. I clinked his glass. Appreciate that. Wouldn't want to waste my talent, right? Dad cleared his throat. Wait, what is this? You run the company? Alan answered for me. She owns it. There it was. Dead silence. Mom looked at me like she was seeing someone else. You never said any of this. No one asked, I said. Behind them, the doors opened again and a new group came in. Some local attorney crowd from the looks of it. But the host gently waved them toward the other side of the restaurant. Ours was booked out. I stood now, slow and controlled, not in a rush. Alan, thanks again for everything tonight. He gave a nod. We'll keep things moving back at the office. Media package rolls out tomorrow. I'll have legal send final docs for digital backup. I walked him to the edge of the room while my family just stood there, still trying to piece it together. As he stepped away, I said it loud enough for every one of them to hear. Thank you for trusting me to lead the expansion. Couldn't ask for a better partner? Then I turned back toward my table, past their frozen faces, and took my seat again. I reached for the champagne. Still cold. Still perfect. I took a sip of my champagne while they just stood there like someone had pulled the fire alarm in their brains. Finally, I looked up and said, "Well, you came back. You might as well sit down." No one moved. "Brad," I said, tilting my head toward the empty chair, "you want to rejoin the table you abandoned, or just keep watching from the wall?" He sat slowly, eyes darting from the binder to the champagne to my phone. His mouth opened, but nothing came out for a second. Then, "Wait, so you really, this whole thing, you own it?" "Every inch of it," I said. "Started it 6 years ago, first with walking, then training. Hired my first staff member out of a garage in Ferndale. Took out a loan, built the mobile app, bootstrapped location number 2. You know, while you were lecturing me about wasting my degree." His face flushed. "You never said anything. You never listened." Mom slid into the seat next to him, trying way too hard to play it casual. "Okay, wait. Dana, are you serious right now? This is a real company?" I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. One tap. Then I turned the screen toward her. "Here's the homepage, and here's the Forbes feature. That was last quarter. Top 10 women-owned franchises to watch. And here's the article from Entrepreneur. Oh, and this one. This one's my favorite. How one dog trainer disrupted an industry. That was 2 months ago. They used a picture of me holding a corgi and a clipboard. Real classy." Mom's smile died halfway through trying to form. She reached for the phone with this weak little laugh, like she was still praying it was some elaborate prank. "You're joking. You didn't tell us, because every time I brought it up, you cut me off. Remember the family reunion? I passed out flyers. Brad laughed and said I was LARPing as a business owner. You told me to stop embarrassing myself." Dad finally took a seat, slower than the others. "You've been keeping this from us the whole time?" "I haven't been hiding. I've been working." Courtney didn't say a word. She sat across from me like a statue, hand clenched tight around her designer purse. I saw her thumb twitch on the strap, probably thinking about that little jab she made earlier. "Spare change." I almost wanted to remind her of it, just to see her squirm. But I didn't have to. Her face said enough. Brad leaned forward, elbows on the table. "So wait, how big is this thing really?" I didn't even blink. 6 locations, 2 more under construction, 42 full-time trainers. Our mobile app's ranked 4th in its category nationally. We train everyone from shelter pups to service dogs to celebrity pets. We just acquired our top competitor. That meeting? The one you walked out on? That was the closing. Silence again. I let it sit. Mom tried to regroup. "Well, honey, this is incredible. We didn't know." "That's the part that stings," I said. "You didn't even want to know." Courtney finally spoke, voice tight. "You had press coverage?" "Oh, sweetie," I said, locking eyes with her. "I've had press coverage for years." She gripped her purse tighter. Brad sat back in his chair like the air had left the room. "I thought you were training people's mutts in your backyard." I raised a brow. "You think I drive a Range Rover because I enjoy car payments?" He didn't answer. I leaned forward, calm and steady. "You all wanted to leave me here to teach me a lesson, but I think maybe I was never the student in this story." Dad opened his mouth, then closed it again. I let the moment hang. No one filled it. Dad cleared his throat again, like that would somehow buy him time. Then he tried to lean forward, soften his voice like we were suddenly in a heart-to-heart. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I tilted my head. "You really want to ask that?" He hesitated. "I mean, we could have supported you, been part of it." "No," I said. "You could have believed me, but you didn't. Not once." Mom chimed in, voice light, like she thought if she smiled enough it wouldn't sound like backpedaling. "We were just trying to help, Dana. We didn't know how serious it was." "Help?" I leaned in, elbows on the table. Help would have been believing in me when I was passing out flyers and driving across town with kennels in my trunk. Help would have been asking how things were going instead of assuming I was still playing in the dirt. "We didn't mean it like that," Dad said quickly. "It's just, you know how risky these things are." "And yet you trusted Brad with a whole promotion party the day he got an assistant title." Brad shifted in his seat, clearly tired of watching his authority evaporate. He cleared his throat, like he was switching into business mode. All right, look, he said, maybe we started off wrong, but we can still work together on this. I mean, marketing's my area. Strategy, branding, I know that space. I could help push the company's presence, national rollout, endorsements, maybe some crossover with my team at the bank, dogs and dollars, right? I stared at him for a beat. Then I laughed, once, sharp and clean. You think I need help with marketing? I'm saying we could collaborate, build this brand together. Family business? I already have a full agency, I cut in. They're not just good, they're lethal. We've got a press manager, social team, media consultant. You've seen the articles. Sure, Brad said, recovering fast. But it's always good to keep it close. Keep it in the family. Brad, I said flatly, you don't even like dogs. He blinked. That's not true. You refused to watch mine when I was in the ER 2 years ago. He shrugged. That was different. No, I said. It's always the same. You ignore, dismiss, then spin around when it's convenient. Courtney opened her mouth but didn't speak. I didn't give her the time. I spent 6 years building this while you all smiled and nodded like I was walking in circles. You wanted me to shrink my life down to a desk job and pretend that was some kind of upgrade. Dad leaned back like I'd slapped him. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. Mom tried again, a little softer. We didn't know what you were capable of. That's the worst part, I said. I did. Brad looked at me like he was still trying to figure out how to flip it back in his favor. But there was nothing left to pitch. No one was buying. He cleared his throat again. I mean, it's a good idea to have backup. What if something goes wrong? I smiled. Then I'll fix it, like I always do. Courtney finally spoke, voice sharp and way too loud for how quiet the table had gone. So what? You just sat on this? Built this whole empire and never told anyone? That's actually kind of shady, Dana. I looked at her like she'd grown a second head. You're calling me shady? I mean, yeah, it feels manipulative. You let us believe you were struggling. I sat back, folded my arms. I was struggling. You just didn't stick around to see the rest. Brad looked uncomfortable, but Courtney wasn't letting up. You let us feel sorry for you, and all that time you were, what, secretly rich? It wasn't a secret. I just stopped explaining myself to people who didn't listen the first 100 times. That's not fair, she snapped. You shut us out. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. I protected myself. There's a difference. She scoffed. From what? You remember that family reunion at Kensington Park? The one where I brought flyers for my first training class? Courtney rolled her eyes. Vaguely. You called them doggy babysitting coupons. Brad laughed so hard he spilled beer on them. And Mom told me I was embarrassing myself in front of relatives from out of state. No one spoke. I didn't shut you out. I just learned how to keep going without begging for approval. Alan reappeared at the table, checking his phone and slipping a folded packet back into his briefcase. Sorry to interrupt. Just got confirmation. Ridgeview signed the last page. It's officially done. Dana, you now own the second largest training chain in the region. Brad blinked. She owns it? Alan nodded. Majority stake. Always has. Every growth milestone came from her plans. Her call to pivot to mobile, her expansion strategy, and her work ethic. Well, you're sitting in the results. Courtney glanced at Brad, then back at me, visibly recalibrating. I let them sit with it a second. Then I stood up. I don't owe any of you anything, I said. Not explanations, not opportunities, not seats at my table. Dad started to speak, but I cut him off. I carried guilt for years, kept thinking I was doing something wrong by not fitting into the life you wanted for me. Every holiday, every dinner, every dig about playing with puppies, I swallowed it, trying to keep peace. But this? I motioned around the table. This is peace. Alan gave a slight nod beside me. I built this without your validation, I said, and I'm done pretending I need it now. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. And for once, I didn't fill the silence for them. Dad finally stood, slow and stiff like he was trying to hold on to something that wasn't there anymore. You're still our daughter, he said, voice low. I met his eyes. Then act like it before it's too late. He flinched, just barely. Mom reached for my arm, smile forced, tone way too upbeat for the weight of the moment. Dana, sweetheart, why don't we join you for a toast? Just one glass, to celebrate your success. Together. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. I've got real friends waiting. People who actually showed up for me while I was grinding. I'd rather toast with them. Brad leaned forward, arms crossed like he thought he was about to drop something deep. Wow, so you're just gonna cut us out? Like that? After everything? I didn't even blink. You cut me out first. Every single time you made a joke at my expense. Every time you called it a dog hobby. Every time you made me feel like chasing something real was a waste of time. He shook his head. This is cold, Dana. No, this is clarity. Courtney finally spoke under her breath. God, you've changed. Yeah, I said. I finally figured out who I am. Without you all dragging me backward. Mom dropped her hand and stepped back like she suddenly realized how far this had gone. We didn't mean to hurt you. You did it anyway. Dad looked down, probably realizing there wasn't a speech that could fix it. Not anymore. I don't hate you, I said. I'm just done trying to make you proud when you never saw me to begin with. Brad scoffed. You've got your money now. That's all you care about. I gave him a look. You think this is about money? It's about respect. The thing none of you gave me until it was too loud to ignore. Nobody had anything left to say, and I didn't need to hear anything else. I turned toward the entrance, already pulling out my phone. I've got better places to be? I stepped away from the table and pulled out my phone. Yeah, I said into the receiver. Bring the SUV around. I'll be out front in 3. Behind me, nobody moved. Not a sound. Just forks sitting on linen napkins and a table full of people, suddenly realizing the roles had flipped and I wasn't the one being left behind. Alan met me near the bar, phone in hand, ready to head out too. Need anything else from me tonight? I shook my head. Nope. You crushed it. He grinned. You took it all the way home, Dana. They'll be talking about this for weeks. Out front, I heard the low purr of the black Escalade pulling up to the curb. One of the valets jogged to open the back door. The restaurant lights bounced off the polished hood like it was rolling out for a red carpet event. Courtney's voice finally broke the silence. She stepped out past Brad, eyes wide. Wait, you have a driver? I turned slightly over my shoulder. Haven't taken a bus in 5 years. She just stared at me, mouth half open. Alan held the door for me, but before I stepped out, I looked back one last time. My family still sat in the same spots, frozen, confused, unraveling, and I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. I turned to Alan. Thanks for everything. I'll catch up with the team at the center. You've earned it, he said. Enjoy the win. A staff member in a black vest held the front door open as I stepped into the night. Congratulations, Ms. Lockhart, he said with a nod. Another one stood at the valet stand and added, We saw the article last month. Impressive work. I gave a small smile. Thanks, means a lot. The driver held the back door open. I slid into the SUV, leather seats cool, the air already set to my preference. Doors closed, soundproof, peaceful. As we pulled away, I glanced once at the restaurant in the rearview mirror. Still no one had come out. Still no apologies worth hearing. And I didn't need any. We pulled into the lot of the flagship center just past 9. The floodlights were on, lighting up the building like a stadium. Even before the SUV came to a full stop, I could hear the dogs, barking, howling, whining like they already knew what kind of night this was. The second I stepped out, the front door burst open. There she is, Amy shouted, grinning like a lunatic, holding a bottle of sparkling cider like it was champagne. The rest followed. Trainers, admin staff, 2 tech guys from the app team, even Maya from the grooming unit still in her scrubs. Dogs barked from the kennels in the back. I swear half of them were wagging their tails in sync. Queen Dana has returned, Javi yelled, raising his glass. I walked up the steps and stopped as the cheers hit me. Full volume, full love. Not 1 ounce of judgment, no fake smiles, no strings. Just real people who'd been there from the start. People who stayed when things were hard, who showed up at 6 a.m. shifts, who handed out flyers with me at street fairs back when no one knew our name. Amy popped the cider and it sprayed everywhere. Over her sweater, onto the tile, a little onto a corgi named Lemon, who yapped in protest and immediately tried to lick it off her paws. You really did it, Maya said, handing me a glass. Ridgeview? Done, I said, smiling. Signed in ink, baby. $50 million empire, and you still show up in sneakers, Javi joked, pointing at my worn Vans. I'll retire the Vans when we hit 100, I shot back. Everyone laughed, loud and real. They already knew what went down. I'd been texting Amy from the table while everything was unraveling. She'd been sending updates into the team chat. Half the crew was watching the reactions roll in on social. Amy held up her phone. The Forbes article already hit their homepage, and, oh my God, page 6 just posted a quote from the dinner. I raised an eyebrow. Which quote? She grinned. You think I drive a Range Rover because I enjoy car payments? I laughed hard. Perfect. We toasted again, this time to growth, to expansion, to never backing down. I looked around at the walls, painted bright, full of posters we'd designed ourselves years ago, with phrases like train the dog, teach the human, and every leash has a story. These weren't just coworkers. This was my real family. The one that stayed late to prep for trial runs, the one that pulled double shifts when a trainer called out, the one that never once called it a hobby. I've been thinking about our next move, I said, raising my voice slightly as the crowd quieted. Dallas, Denver, Phoenix, we hit those next. We push the mobile app harder, and I want to build a mentorship program. Bring in people who don't have degrees, but have the drive. Give them what I didn't have starting out: access, support, a shot. The team clapped, nodded, threw out ideas on the spot. There was already energy behind it. That's what I loved about them. They didn't wait to be told to believe in something. They just did. Laughter rang out as Lemon tripped over a chew toy and took Javi down with her. I leaned back against the counter and just took it all in. The joy, the noise, the mess, the celebration. No tension, no eggshells. Just people who saw me the way I always hoped to be seen. They believed before there was proof. They stuck around through the struggle, and now they were here for the win. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely, absolutely seen. I sat on the edge of the reception counter, cider in one hand, my phone in the other. Notifications poured in like a faucet stuck wide open. Push alerts from news sites, tagged photos at the steakhouse, reposts of quotes I hadn't even realized someone caught. Alan had already forwarded me the official press release. The headline on one article read, Detroit dog trainer secures $50 million deal and leaves her doubters speechless. Fitting. A new pic popped up, me clinking glasses with Alan, documents on the table. Someone had snapped it just as my dad froze at the front entrance. You could see him in the background, mid-step. Courtney's face said everything. Right then, my phone buzzed again. Text from Mom. Please call us. I stared at the screen for a second, then locked it. No reply. You good? Came a voice to my right. I turned. New guy, Zach, one of the junior trainers we hired last month. Kid had drive, always asked smart questions. Yeah, I said, setting the phone down. I'm good. He hesitated, then asked, Can I ask something kind of personal? Shoot. How do you deal with family who doesn't get it, like doesn't believe in what you're doing? I didn't hesitate. You build your own, the ones who show up when it counts. He nodded slowly. That's solid. Yeah, I said. Took me a while to learn that one. Someone called my name from the back. The evening group class was wrapping up. I slid off the counter, smoothed out my hoodie, and gave Zach a pat on the shoulder. Come on, I said. Let's go see the real family. We walked onto the training floor, where clients were packing up, laughing, chatting with our staff. A golden retriever bounded past me and licked my wrist before heading to the door. Amy tossed me a towel to clean off, grinning. Welcome back, boss. Did I ever leave? I shot back. The lights were bright, the energy was high, and the room was full of people who never once asked me to be smaller. Right there, surrounded by dogs, laughter, and people who chose me, was everything I'd ever needed. I was free.